everybody, Sales Hacker community. Thanks for joining us and welcome to another awesome Sales Hacker webinar. I'm your host. I'm Colin Campbell. You know me, the Director of Marketing at Sales Hacker. And today we are all lucky enough to be joined by Taft Love. Taft, thanks for being here, man.
Hey, Colin. Thank you. I appreciate you having me.
It's good. It's going to be good stuff. So, people, you're joining because you maybe want to learn more about sales ops. Maybe you're on a sales ops team and you want to progress your career and get better and better. You're in the right place because Taft has had leadership positions in sales and sales ops at places like PandaDoc, Smart Recruiter, House Canary, and he's now the head of operations at Iceberg RevOps, which is like a special ops team, drop into organizations, put something in place that works, and on to the next mission. Right, Taft?
Yeah, that's right. So, yeah, Iceberg is essentially your ops team before you're big enough to have your own ops team.
There you go, yeah. But the really interesting thing about your career is what happened before sales. So you have this really interesting trajectory, and you're pulling experience from all kinds of different roles. So tell us a little bit about how you got to where you are today.
Cool. So I dropped out of college at 19 years old. I was bored, didn't enjoy my classes, and almost on a whim decided to go to police academy. So I became a street cop at 20 years old. And pretty quickly realized that maybe my parents were onto something about the college thing. So went back to school, worked for years as a street police officer and full-time school and a waiter in the evenings. And finished undergrad, went to grad school. All the while, I joined the SWAT team, became a detective, and around the time I got my MBA, I became a forensic accountant essentially, and joined a federal task force doing fraud investigations with IRS, DEA, FBI, and Secret Service. And then I finally got tired of being a poor local cop in the South, and went overseas for a few years. And when I came back from overseas, I jumped into the startup world.
Yeah, super awesome. I think that's a really interesting career change, and obviously like experience in the police academy on a SWAT team, all of that, you're going to have a highly organized approach to life. You're going to be able to get from being an investigator, get way down, bottom things out, double click on everything until you know the source of truth. And so I imagine that has served you very well in your sales ops life and rev ops life. So we're thankful to have you here because I think the audience wants to learn from all that experience. So today, everybody, we're talking about some of the biggest mistakes that sales ops leaders make and sales ops teams make. Sometimes it's not only the leader's fault. But we're going to talk about how to avoid them too. So there's a lot to dig into here. We want to make sure we're unpacking the right things for you. So a couple things right off the bat. You're in the live version of this webinar. That means you're here to participate. If you wanted to just hear what Taft had to say, you could have watched the recording. And by the way, we will send the recording out later. But you're here live, so everybody pop open the Q&A box right now. I'll wait. Right at the bottom of your screen, Q&A. That's where you can ask Taft questions. That's where you can disagree with him if he has some crazy ideas, and we can have a conversation. Thanks, Jennifer. I see you. So the other thing we want to do is we want to make sure that we understand where all y'all are coming from. So we have a poll we want to run, and you should see that in just a few minutes. Here it is. Okay. The poll just popped up for me. I see it. Just let us know what your title or what your role is so we know who we're talking to here. I'll give you a minute. Jessica's a BDR manager. Jessica, did you get the poll? There should be another little pop-up thing from Zoom. Welcome, by the way. Hi, James. I see you too. All right. So while y'all are doing that, let's get started. So there's a couple things here that I want to start with that might seem a little simple, Taft, but here's the dummy question, because I think that this has changed a little bit over recent years. What is sales operations? What did it kind of start as, and where is it now?
Great. So sales operations is a little bit like AI. It depends on who you're talking to. But I think there's sort of a universal definition that we can apply across the board here. So I'd say that sales ops is the team or the job of designing and maintaining a system that your sales team uses to sell. So the repeatable system that your sales team utilizes, and that includes process, training, everything all the way through systems. That's sales ops.
Got it. But then there's also this term that I'm seeing more and more frequently, revenue operations. So is there a difference? And if so, what is that difference?
There is a difference. So within sales, you have sales development and account executives and success management, right? You have the greater umbrella of sales and then its sub pieces. Well, sales ops is one of the sub pieces of revenue operations. So RevOps, I think of as customer success ops, sales ops, marketing ops, in many cases, finance ops. And the reason that you're seeing a transition to all of these operational teams being consolidated under one roof or one umbrella is because the funnel's changing. We all see it. Everyone's moving to account-based everything. The funnel is different than it was 20 years ago, and so operations have to catch up.
Got it. That makes sense. So we got RevOps, and a smaller piece of that is sales ops. What does that mean in terms of like ownership to sales ops? So sales ops builds the system that people sell in. That means they own like sales tech stack, right? What else falls under ownership where if there's a sales ops leader in an organization, I can point to that person and say, you own items A, B, C, D.
Absolutely. So what I see most often, and I go into a lot of companies and find that this is different everywhere, but generally speaking, the responsibilities for sales ops fall into two buckets. Operations, so we're talking about things like CRM admin, sales process design, designing quotas, territories, all of the nuts and bolts of allowing sales reps to do their jobs effectively or efficiently rather. And then there's the effectiveness piece, the training and enablement. This can be anything from documenting how the processes work all the way to competitor research and kill sheets for each of your various competitors. And so there's a really sort of broad range that these teams can inhabit.
Got it. Right. So what about, so you mentioned the funnels changing first, and that's why RevOps is becoming more of a thing. So my understanding is like several years ago, sales operations was kind of thought of as like number crunchers, more or less, right? But so what's behind the change? What's behind the shift of like now sales ops seems to own a little bit more. It's a little bit more intentional and also fall under the revenue ops bucket. We know the funnel's changing. What's behind that? Why is it doing that?
So the reason for that is I think a lot of companies are waking up to the fact that people don't buy, companies buy. Individuals, I mean, when was the last time, if there are AEs in the audience here, there are some individual contributors, SDRs or AEs. Folks, when you call into a company, you don't take the first yes or no as the final answer, right? Because companies buy by committee. It also means that sales cycles are longer than ever before. Companies want to do their own research. They don't just go to RFP, pick a winner, and move on. And so the funnel is now no longer cleanly split between marketing, sales, and then customer success after the sale happens. Now, marketing and SDRs tag team accounts, often with the help and guidance of AEs. And so they're working together from the very top of the funnel all the way through customer success. You look at companies like User Testing, their SDRs call into their client base just as much as they do new companies. And so the operations that these teams used to work together are so blurred and so intertwined that 3 or 4 separate operations teams will have a really hard time staying on the same page without centralized leadership.
Yeah, and so like the devil is in the details. So as soon as your deal goes from one person, one buyer to 2, bottoming out with like a win-loss analysis and figuring out just what happened becomes all the more complex. And you need a stronger, more intentional system behind the sales rep to find all those little, to find the nuances, right?
Absolutely. Think about leads. Think about the fact that it wasn't so long ago that you get a lead, you work that lead, and if it becomes an opportunity, great. If not, hey, maybe we get another one from that company. Well, now companies are realizing that inbound is just an excuse to go outbound, which means if we get a couple leads from one company, well, how does the marketing team automatically let the sales team know that they're getting nibbles from other companies out there, right? So you have things like lean data that keeps that across all the teams, keeps the data moving exactly where you expect it to go. A lead comes in, well, does it belong to a target account? Because maybe that shouldn't go to marketing or the SDRs. And then companies like Sixth Sense doing some really cool stuff, helping bridge the gap between marketing and sales. The lines are just blurred, man. They're never going back to the old style.
Yeah, yeah, 100%. And I've been talking about this for a while. Scott Barker, who some of you may have been expecting, by the way, to see Scott on this webinar, he had to do something. So I stepped in. I got lucky. I got to talk to Taft. Scott Barker has been publishing and talking about that recently, how like some of the best salespeople are really good marketers as well. So like it's favoring generalists, like the person who can understand how the AE who can understand like the sales stack and how all that ties together might be a better seller as a result of like being a little bit of a technical person, right?
Absolutely. 100% true.
And speaking of tech stack, so that's the other thing that I think is like a common misconception about sales ops is that it's just like, yeah, they organize the tech stack and make sure like the integrations work.
Here's why that conception has come about. Sales leaders for years have owned sales operations, which the naming convention would lead you to believe that makes perfect sense, but it's wrong. And sales leaders love tools because tools solve problems, right? Got a problem, slap a tool on it, done.
Yeah.
Of course, we all know that's
right.
And so the reason that happens is these sales ops teams, report to the CRO, the VP of sales, and modern CROs are more operators than ever before. So there are a lot of companies not behaving this way, but tons and tons of companies out here do behave this way. It's why everywhere you go, everybody wants a map of all the tools. Everybody wants to know, what's your tool stack? How do you solve this problem? Which tool do you use to solve this problem? And it's because you have non-operations people running an operations team. And so, of course, the conception is, well, these people's job is to keep my tools in order, not to find the root of problems, solve them, and then, if necessary, layer a tool in to make it more efficient.
Right. And so, but you have kind of both sides, experience on like both sides, right? So your leadership experience, both in law enforcement, I guess, and in sales, has translated well into sales operations leadership experience. So, like, what helped you make that move? And then what did you have to learn when you went from being like kind of a sales guy to like a sales operations guy?
So there are a few things that helped make the move. Maybe the most important was just luck, right place, right time. Had I been at Salesforce or Oracle or somewhere big where it's really hard to step out of your lane, I wouldn't have made that transition. I would have become a much better salesperson and probably never learned much about ops. But I was at PandaDoc, a company that was kind enough to stay out of my way when I wanted to try some dumb shit to fix things. And they let my trial and error persist until we actually started improving the operations. And eventually I just became the ops guy. And that's how a lot of people, that's one of the two most common paths to ops guy or girl, right? You're a salesperson and you step in, or you're a Salesforce admin and they decide that qualifies you to be an ops person and you're in the role. So I was one of those two common paths.
Do you think one of those paths is favorable to the other? Like, is it better to start in sales or no?
No, it's more about the person than the path. There's no right or wrong answer here, other than you actually have to think about ops from a higher level than the average sales team does. And nothing against the sales teams. Their job is not to do operations. Their job is to drive revenue. And so, of course, they don't think about operations the way that you really need to create a smooth, scalable operational infrastructure that makes teams successful. And so regardless of which path you took, the important thing is to have an overarching philosophy that guides your decisions and to really put your feet down and dig in when you know you're right and the sales team is asking you for things that are not a good use of your time. It's I think it's one of the big mistakes that companies make is bulldozing the ops people, because oftentimes the ops people are young, fairly inexperienced. And so they're thought of as a tool and not a business partner to help you build a better operational infrastructure.
Yeah, yeah. So this is what you're talking about, having the right philosophy in place, the right understanding from the get-go. So the wrong philosophy is your sales ops team is like fulfillment. Like, hey, set up this tool, make this integration work this way. Please redesign our territories. What's the right philosophy? How can sales ops be a leader for their own practice in a larger sales organization?
Yeah, despite the fact that the sales leaders are generally the ones with the power in this scenario, it's up to ops people and ops leadership to sort of instill this mindset in their organization. So the first thing to do is say no. It is
Yeah.
really exciting. Every ops person I've worked with and the ones who have worked for me, they love saying yes because your value as an ops person is fixing things and building things and being the guy or the girl who can do that. And
Right.
so a lot of people get tons of validation out of the, wow, you got that fixed so quickly. You implemented that tool so fast, and you get a rush of dopamine from, fixing the problem. And so often you skip the important parts, which are scoping the problem, confirming that the problem is really a problem, confirming that the problem can be solved with a tool, and all of the other stuff that should lead up to the fix. And so it's really easy to get in this cycle where I wrote a blog post on Outreach the other day about this, about sales or sales ops who should be the police. And one of the
Yep.
things I talked about is this negative cycle you get into, where sales tells you build something, you go build it, it doesn't work, and then sales tells you to build something else to fix the thing that never should have been built in the first place.
Right, right.
It's a cycle. So it's up to ops. Sales is never going to fix this because they don't have the skill set. You can't expect them to fix this. It's not because they're dumb. It's because they're not in a position to fix it. You, Mr. and Mrs. Ops person, you are in a position to fix it. So step one is every ask you get, slow down. Everything is on fire. Everything is on fire all the time. It's okay. And it's okay to tell people no, because the salesperson's definition of urgency, I've been one, I've been there, I've been the one yelling, why is this not fixed? But their definition of urgent is just not the same as mine. I now understand that
Right.
urgent and important are two different things, and slow down and confirm whether this is actually important. And once it is, then figure out what the cost is of not fixing it. And then what is the cost of fixing it, and actually do an analysis of the situation before you just go build stuff so you get the attaboy.
Yeah, I love that. The power of just saying no, or at least saying like, yeah, we can look at that, instead of jump to the like implement things, is like a great. I mean, that's a good career tip for almost any role, but it's something that's like really hard to learn. Like, people like to make other people happy, especially service-minded people who find themselves in roles where they're enabling and empowering and giving other people solutions.
100%. And the goal here, the message to take away isn't literally say no to everything. The
Right.
message here is you're the expert. They hired you, Mr. or Mrs. Ops person. Or if you're in sales, remember, you're paying this ops person good money to give you advice. Don't steamroll them. Actually ask them what they think is the right solution to this problem. Treat them like a doctor. You don't go to a doctor and say, hey, doc, write me this prescription because my leg
Write
hurts.
me a script. Right.
No, that's malpractice. And it is for you too, ops people. That's malpractice. If the salespeople walk in and they say, hey, we need a field. I wanted to do this thing, so go make it happen, which you've all been in the room when this happens. You go make the field. 6 months later, you run field trip. If you don't run field trip, go run it today and look at all the junk inside your Salesforce instance. You run field trip and you look and see that field that was an absolute emergency. They have to have it. If they don't have it, everyone dies and the company goes under and we're going to explode, has been filled on 4 records. They forgot it existed an hour after you built it. Why?
Right.
It's not actually a solution to the problem. The problem they were having, they misdiagnosed. And you, Mr. or Mrs. Ops person, didn't step up to the plate and say, hey, slow down, explain the problem to me and explain the effect it's having on you, and let's see if we can find a real solution. And that is just a tiny version of what happens with things like tools. People spend hundreds of thousands of dollars on tools because their ops people don't say like, whoa, let's actually talk about what the problem is and let's map the problem and how this problem fits into the overarching framework of our operations. They just say like, oh, cool, I can get an attaboy for for implementing this thing. And guess what? I can get it done in 48 hours. This idiot thinks it's going to take a week. I'm going to get it done on Wednesday and I'm going to be a hero, but you're not a hero.
Yeah, right.
You're just getting an attaboy for essentially putting off pain.
Yeah, 100%. And there's actually a really good comment and question here from Brian Teal. Brian, thanks for this one. Brian says there are often times where sales understands why something is happening, while sales ops shows numbers of why they assume things are happening. So if there's a break in communication between those two groups, have you seen an easy way to get both teams working together and like dropping the defensiveness, where if they have a disagreement about, they both recognize a problem, different ideas about what's the root cause of that problem? How, like in conversations, is there meetings? How do you put solutions and communications in place to like find where's the right answer?
Most often when I see this happening, it's a systemic issue. So let's back up and let's assume for a second that this isn't something that ultimately is a matter of opinion, because there are some things that just land on, we have to agree to disagree, right? I've been in those conversations where they make a good point, I make a good point. Ultimately, both are subjective, and we have to say agree to disagree. Whoever is the boss has to make the call, and you have to own the impact of that decision. Let's assume that's not the case. What I see more often is the result of a systemic issue, which often comes from just a lack of alignment on things as simple as language. I do consulting with a lot of companies, step into so many where someone in marketing says, hey, we sent you 10 leads last month. What did you do with them? And sales says, we only had 4 leads and we lost them. Wait, what? Wait, what?
Right.
What's you guys are using different languages here. So often it's a systemic thing. So step one is to take a big step out. And the first thing I do with any client is map their process, and they hate it and they all think it's a waste of time and they think they're getting ripped off because, you know, this idiot's coming in here for a bunch of money and just mapping stuff that we already know. It's in my head. But when you map things, often you identify a lot of these gaps, and you often when you put all stakeholders in the same room and show them the map, you find that one person goes, oh, you labeled MQL wrong, that says SQL, and then suddenly the other teams go, no, that isn't SQL, and boom,
right.
You have a disconnect. So I think
you uncover all the little assumptions that seem so small and innocuous, but they make a big downstream difference, right?
100%. And so I'm not sure, Brian, if I'm answering the question you're asking. And often some of these are big, nasty questions that are as much about personnel and how you communicate with each other as they are about some quick fix. But generally, some large proportion of them are just systemic issues dealing with speaking the same language and understanding how things work. The best thing you can do is have your ops people map out how everything works. Something as simple as, you know, if you're doing ABM, which I can get to this later, but shut up about ABM. You're probably not doing ABM, even though you say you are. If you're doing ABM, it is more important than ever to have everyone in the same room with the ops people and map out what account status is or how accounts move through the funnel, and how to understand where at any given time an account is in the giant life cycle that you all have in your heads and very few of you actually have on a piece of paper.
So let's talk about this communication. Like, you map it out. Everybody gets in a room. They all look at the map together, and then they find those disagreements. That's kind of like the start. We've turned a new page. Now our organization at least has a common understanding that we don't have a common understanding of the process. From that point on, how do we keep that gap closed? Like, do sales leaders and sales ops need a charter? Do they need a weekly meeting where they don't talk about pipeline, where they just kind of, so what's the operational piece for keeping that going?
So there are a few things I like to do here. So let's set aside the ongoing maintenance and all the meetings and stuff. I have some opinions about that, but let's start with just the fundamental things. You're building the foundation for a good, smooth operation. So you've mapped it out. You now understand, everybody agrees that this is how our world should work. Well, now you have to do a few things. One is align your systems to match that view of the world. Often the systems, and I can tell you this is going to resonate with almost everyone out here. If you go look in Salesforce, You're going to find fields you didn't know existed. If you look in the back end, often if you look in your view, just whatever layout you have access to, go to the account layout, and I want you to just like look through at all the fields. And I'll eat my shirt if you can't find a field where you go, I wonder what that does, or what does that really mean? And so the first is to clean and align your system with this new view of the world. That's step one. Then step two is building infrastructure. I like to think of it as, you ever go bowling with kids and they put the bumpers on the lanes? You got to build bumpers. And so what I mean by that is use things like validation rules, use the stuff that's already inside the tools you've already bought. Don't go buy tools to solve this. Build some additional infrastructure that makes sure that all of the things that this worldview requires being filled are filled all the time. And build some processes around just keeping it clean. So that's sort of your big step one. From there, you get into the ongoing maintenance. And by the way, you need to create easy, accessible, and well-maintained documentation of all this, which is, easier said than done, of course. But one of the most important things is actually memorializing all the little decisions you make in a clean place. I personally have no connection with these guys, but I like Guru. That's the Get Guru is an amazing tool for this, and good for ops teams to sort of communicate on an ongoing basis. Have like a cheat sheet for all of your operations for all the salespeople, and then after that you have the ongoing maintenance, which I'm not a big fan of standing meetings. I don't know when the last time was that I had a standing meeting where like a month later we weren't canceling it or using it for something else. And the more important thing in sales leaders, I'm talking specifically to you, you guys get near there's always something going on, right? It's the beginning of the quarter. We need to start strong. It's the middle of the quarter. We got to get over the hump. It's the end of the quarter. Everything's on fire. You have to make yourself available to ops people and actually give them your attention. So many sales leaders, because ops isn't fun to them and it's not exciting and it doesn't get them paid immediately. It will get you paid, just not immediately. They tend to brush off ops all the time. And then once something's really, really painful, they'll, angrily get the ops people in the room and yell about this problem, and they'll give you an hour of their attention. And then the next 10 times the ops person tries to set a meeting, you ignore them because like, we already talked about this. You have to give some attention. And you have to set aside some bandwidth for this. And it cannot be every Monday at 10 a.m., load me up. You have to make some time. If one of your AEs comes to you and says like, hey, I got this interesting deal coming together. I think this might end my quarter strong. Can you help me? You're sure as shit going to go help them, right? Remember that every hour you give your ops people might enable your salespeople to get there way, way, way more often. You're going to give them back lots of time that they spend feeling like they're in the DMV because your CRM sucks. Instead of brushing them off, actually give them that attention and help them answer those questions for the ongoing maintenance, and it pays off.
Yeah. So something that struck me is that, like you mentioned, this isn't, it's not sexy. Like, it's not glamorous. All the work you're describing, like mapping a process, doing a field inventory, keeping documentation, that's the kind of stuff that might put some people to sleep. But if you're a sales ops person and you find yourself getting really excited about new projects all the time, maybe it's because you're not spending enough time buttoning things up that have already been done, or because you're not spending enough time doing that kind of grinded out research to really bottom out where the detail is.
100%. And sales leaders, start rewarding that. Stop rewarding obviously you want to give thumbs up to your ops people and all the people that work for you as often as you can. But stop only rewarding quick fixes and quick turnaround times. Start getting curious about what they're actually doing. Like what's going on with the big cleanup project you're doing in Salesforce? How far along is that? You start paying attention to it and just giving them positive validation for positive reinforcement when you see that like the project's moving, and when you see them getting excited about things within this big boring project that you hate to talk about. You know what? Swallow that feeling and get yourself involved and at least care about it. That will pay off so much more than than them getting a report to you really quickly because you need it.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I'm a fan of saying like your behavior is what there's a smarter saying about this that a lot of people know, but if somebody's behaving a certain way, it's because of how they've been incentivized to behave. And we're not talking like formal incentive programs here necessarily, but those little like pops of like attaboys and pats on the back, those matter for the even for those like long-term kind of boring sounding projects.
And think about your ops team. Mr. or Mrs. Sales Leader, you run a sales team. You have broad generalization here, but pretty true. You have a team of people wherein the absolute best are coin operated, right? You can incentivize them with money and things other than praise, right? Of course, everybody needs praise, but multiply the effect that praise has on your sales team by like 10, and you'll get the effect it has on the ops team. Remember, these big deals coming in aren't that meaningful to them. It's good for the company. It's good for their stock. They care about it, of course, but it's a different world when you're not getting a $20,000 check for bringing this deal in, right? And you got to remember that there is no other incentive making them want to do their job really well, other than just like you recognizing that they're killing it, even though they're not doing the sexy stuff.
Yeah, 100%. So I just want to take a really quick pause here for a second and remind everybody, you're in the live version. Don't save your questions for your deathbed. Like, let's get some more. What's your thing that's annoying to you that your sales ops person does? If you're a sales ops person, what's annoying to you that your sales leader does? Let's solve some problems with Taft today. So pop your questions in. We'll take them as they come. One other thing that I just wanted to ask you about, Taft, because we've talked a little bit about how sales ops is not sexy now for like 10 minutes, but there are like some really interesting things in sales ops and in the broader picture of revenue ops. Like, what right now is making you get up and go attack this world in the morning? What's exciting here?
The thing I'm zeroed in on most right now, and the thing I'm getting the most satisfaction out of working on, is something that people generally don't pay much attention to, and that is the sales development funnel.
Okay.
You go to an SDRs and SDR leadership that are listening. I'd love to hear differently if you guys are seeing something else. But I've been in the SDR world for quite a while. That's sort of my home, and so every conference I go to, it's happening a bit less now, but still far too much. You see a bunch of leaders get together, and just like at any account executive conference or VP sales conference with SDRs and SDR leadership, people stand around and talk about email campaigns they ran and response rates. And some of them talk about the opportunities they created or the revenue that came from these campaigns. But generally speaking, they can't track that, right?
Yeah.
And also, campaigns are still people focused in most companies. Now, companies that have really embraced ABM and are doing it right, that may not be the case, but generally people out there are thinking about campaigns that speak to individuals. And so what your average SDR leader cannot tell you is how many accounts you need to go after, and God forbid you define go after, right? How many accounts you have to approach in order to get the number of opportunities necessary to hit the pipeline number that's set in front of you. People still use activities like phone calls, basically. How many calls are people making every month, and how many opportunities came from X number of phone calls? And while activities is part of the equation, it is not the top of your funnel. Most of you don't know what the top of your funnel is, and no fault of yours, right? Nobody's really dug into this yet. But in sales development world, I'm having a really good time sort of building stuff. My clients have been calling me lately to go in and build an infrastructure in Salesforce to measure this.
So this is like a plugin? You're adding, like, building an add-on to Salesforce?
So for the last 6 or 8 months. So first of all, let me say outreach. I just wrote an ebook. I literally gave the secret away. I've been making money doing this, but the point here isn't just to like hoard the secrets. I wrote a step-by-step, basically just like putting together furniture, right? It tells you what fields to build. It tells you what to name them. It tells you what apps you need, roll-up helper to get the information where it needs to go, so that in the end, you can run a report that says last month, last quarter, last year, this team or all my teams or everyone activated. And I explained to you what activate means and how to filter for activation and things like this. We activated 100 accounts. We engaged with 40 of those. 10 of those were opportunities, and this is how much revenue we got from those efforts. And within all this data, you can say, on average, how many contacts did we activate in each account? How many contacts did we actually go after in each company? And how many emails and calls did we log against each contact in the successful companies versus the unsuccessful companies? And suddenly you have a funnel, because a VP of sales would get fired if they couldn't tell you, like, how many opportunities did you have, top of your funnel? And of that, where did people fall out of your funnel? Any VP of sales worth their salt is just getting fired if they can't answer that. Go ask an SDR leader that, and they'll say, well, we did a lot, and like so many that it's like a lot. And it sounds like a Trump rally where it's like, it's so great, we're doing so much, but they're not able to give you specifics because they don't know how to measure it. And it's not their fault. It's damn hard to do because nobody has built this infrastructure. So, like, go get the ebook, read it. It's hard. If you're not an ops person, you're going to think you're in over your head, but hand it to a Salesforce admin and they'll go, oh, I got this.
Or learn it, like use it as your opportunity. Like the first time I ever built a table, it was definitely an IKEA table. And now I'm going to a woodworking shop and making tables from scratch. You got to start somewhere.
Yeah.
Jennifer and Johanna are asking, what's the name of the ebook? Where can we get it? Zachary wants it too. Guys, do me a favor. If you want the ebook, just make a note of it in the Q&A section, write ebook, and I'll make sure everybody that wants it gets it. Okay, we'll send it out to you after.
Mike
cool.
asked
So that's really interesting.
here.
So like,
Go ahead.
You're taking time. It sounds like most sales ops people aren't spending enough time on the SDR function. You're putting your time on the top of the funnel. What are you learning? Like, what's the big miss in that piece?
So there are two misses here. So this all started. Let me back up, because I've been talking about, like, understand the problem before you build something. So let me take you through that, because otherwise I'm teaching you a bad habit. So I found myself when I was at Smart Recruiters, I ran operations and sales development. And so in sales development, one of the things that was really uncomfortable for me was when my CRO or CEO, depending on who I was reporting to at the time, came to me and said, hey, great work last quarter. You brought in $1 million in new pipeline. Next quarter, we need 1.5 million. What do you need from me? Mm-hmm. And my answer was generally, well, I had 5 reps. And that was $1 million. So maybe I need 3 more reps to get to $1.5 million safely. The problem with that is people are not an input in your funnel, right? People are not an input. A VP of sales doesn't say, I need 2 more sales reps. No, they say, I need 10 more opportunities. That will require 1 more sales rep to work those opportunities. So people often in SDR world, because none of this is measurable, they conflate inputs and resources. And so first of all, you have to be able to measure inputs, outputs, and those conversion rates. So you need to be able to say the way this should go. And let me back up. So I couldn't answer that question. It was embarrassing. Often I hit my number, but not because I was right, just because, like, directionally I was kind of accurate and had a feel for it. And you can drive by gut for a little while, but that doesn't scale. And I hate that doesn't scale argument. Everything doesn't need to scale, but damn it, this does, right? You want to build a big sales development machine, you got to know your numbers. So step 1 was understand the funnel. So that's what I've been talking about with, we activated 100 accounts and that spit out 12 opportunities. You need 24 more opportunities. Well, then I need to activate 200 more accounts. Well, that's great. The problem that you still have is now you need the resourcing piece. A VP of sales can say, you know what? I generally don't like to assign more than 4 new opportunities a week to an account executive. So 32 opportunities next month, I need 2 more account executives, right? They know the resource cost of those opportunities. Well, what SDR leadership, they sort of do. They have a feel for it, but generally they don't know the exact resource cost. So that was step two, is how do I now back into resource cost now that I know how many accounts I need to activate? Well, that is by standardizing everything, building a framework that you can plug SDRs into. So what I said was, okay, well, we know that activating an account requires reaching out to 5 contacts.
Okay, so so we're talking about activating an accounts.
Yeah.
That doesn't always have the same definition.
Nope.
But we need to. So like in this org, maybe it's not activated as an account until 5 contacts have been some kind of outreach. Okay, so what's the value of using that as your metric of activity, activated account?
So there is no specific value to using that relative to anything else.
Okay.
You need to plug your narrative into this. So my narrative was, we know that when we go wide and shallow, we don't get much pipeline. We just know that. We know that if we put 1 or 2 people from 100 companies into, and we tested this over time, not very formally, but we knew, go deep, do 6, 7, 8, 10 people in each account, and you get more opportunities. So, so we decided, well, if we want more people, if we want them to go deeper, then let's make that the definition of activation. And so 5 people was the number that we decided on. And so
got it. Okay.
What we also did, the other thing, now you still don't have resources aligned, because if I'm an SDR and I put 5 people in a sequence that includes like 1 call, 3 emails, and a LinkedIn note, and then Sarah, who sits next to me, puts 5 people in 5 different sequences, some of which have 8 calls, and some have 2 calls, and some have just 26 emails. So the resourcing is different, right? So me activating an account is very different than her. So we need to standardize that also, so that we know the resource cost of 1 account activation. Yeah. And so what we do there is I created a template, and this is in the ebook. It's all free. Go read it. I basically built a template that was a blank outreach sequence. And you can do this with any sales automation tool, but outreach is just the one we happen to use. Created a blank template, and it was day 1, email 1, day 2, call, email, day 3, email, and so on. There's no content in any of these. There's just blank everything. Anytime we build a new sequence, we have to use that template. So clone that template and then put your messaging in, right? But the choreography must remain the same. It starts with a call, then 2 emails, then a call, and it takes 40 days, 26 activities. And if you always use that same distribution of activities, then suddenly everything's standard. So if I activate 5 people and Sarah activates 5 people, they're getting the same type and number of activities over the same amount of time. Well, suddenly we've got a funnel that we can add resources to and really understand. And of course, if we have 20 activities spread across this one sequence and outreach, we know that some people unsubscribe, some people tell you no, some people tell you yes, and on average, 13 of those activities actually happen. And so now law of large numbers kicks in after a few months, and we know that 4 of those activities are manual, let's say, because I don't count as resourcing auto emails, right? That takes nothing. You can spin up auto emails for days and spam the world, but that's not what these tools were actually built for. And so say that we count the first email, which requires that you write some customization, and every call is a manual activity. And those are the ones we consider like resource draining. So easy math. Let's say there are 4 manual activities on average per contact and 5 contacts per company. Activating 1 account costs what? 100 manual activities. And I know I can now say, all right, your quota is activate 10 accounts this week or 5 accounts this week or whatever. That's all I got to think about. Now I just use my tool to manage to the activities. And your quota is meetings, opportunities, pipeline, whatever the primary part of your quota is. And now I don't think about activities. Activities are baked into the system. All I got to do is manage to you not skipping them. And if you're skipping them, we got a problem, right? And so now I understand the resource cost. So now I can do what a VP of sales does. When they say, we need $1 million in revenue, they say, well, we have a 30% win rate and So I need 3 million in pipeline, and that pipeline will show up in, 6 months after you give it to me. So for me to hit my August number, I need 3 million in pipeline next month, right? Well, now we can do that. Now suddenly we can have the same conversation with the CEO that the VP of sales can have. And we can say, hey, look, you need another 3 million in pipeline. Well, you need 20 more opportunities. And to get one opportunity, we need 10 accounts activated, right? So that's 200 account activations. So that's 20,000 activities or whatever. I'm screwing up the math, doing it in my head. And I know that each month, one rep can do 1,200 manual activities. That's what we expect of a rep. And some will do more, some will do less. Law of large numbers says one rep can do that many. So now you can do the math and say, okay, well, we know it's going to take X number of days. That's the other thing that I like to measure is like how long between stages of the SDR funnel. That's the other thing you got to know. You have to know like when this is coming in, because how often have you guys been in a meeting where people say, oh, we need another 2 million in pipeline this month because we owe 500,000 in revenue. And it's like, that's not how this works. You got to factor time in.
Right.
So that's the thing I've been like really digging in on and trying to, it took me a year and a half to like get here, building trial and error. But finally I'm at a place where I actually like love going in and understanding a process. And so to answer your question of what's exciting to me right now in ops, it's exactly this. It's one of the last places that like nobody's really scratched the surface of.
Taft, you have a beautiful mind. That is like an amazing the fact that I know you're peppered by the urgent requests all the time. So the fact that you're able to prioritize to the extent where you can get predictability and systemization and standardization to that extent, I think really impressive. And we actually got a couple questions about this earlier on. This is probably a good time to surface. We have actually a few audience questions. So with the remaining time, maybe we should just tackle these. What do you think?
Yeah, let's do it.
Let's do it. Cool. So here's the question. When you've got the incoming requests, and when you've got your own big list of things you want to achieve, first of all, like even like logistically, like how do you organize a to-do list? Is it the notepad or like Evernote? Like what's your how do you project manage yourself?
Okay. Not a tool guy, so this isn't important. I use Rike. I'm a big fan of Rike. It's free for small teams. It's easy to use. It keeps you well organized and it integrates with everything if you pay like $10 a month a user. You don't need Rike. You can use a notepad. You can use whatever you want. But let's back up from the day-to-day. There's something I think more important about organizing that goes back to like the overarching philosophy. I learned a practice when I was at Smart Recruiters. We had what was called a SMART plan. And it's same thing a lot of companies do. The leadership does quarterly plans to explain what they're going to do over the next 3 months. What are their goals? What are the projects they're going to tackle? Often ops doesn't do this because I think it's understood that, well, ops job is to support the VP of sales or the CRO in her goals, which are all like revenue, and they're not really, they don't speak directly to ops. It's sort of ops job to either translate that into an operational plan or more often just do whatever the hell she says to do, even though she doesn't really understand what she's asking for, because your job is just to do stuff. And so what I've done since Smart Recruiters, where the CEO there had us do these plans, and it really took root. And everyone on my team does one of these plans. When we step into a client, we do a plan that is over whatever time frame they're working with us for. But if you're internal, do the same thing. Have a quarterly plan, and do not just say, I'm going to build this field and do this thing and build these reports. Back up. Say, which problems are the most pressing? Interview people in the business. Just put your foot down. Everybody's problem is always the most important because everybody is naturally selfish. I am too, right? Everybody wants their problem fixed. You got to decide. It is your job. You don't get paid to sit on the fence, and you don't get paid to just like do what people who don't really understand your job say to do. You get paid to fix big problems. So go interview people, understand what the biggest problems are, realistically guess which ones you can solve, take a look at your bandwidth and lay out which problems you're going to solve. And then below that, how are you going to solve them, and break it down piece by piece. And of course, plans never go to plan, but it is a great sort of North Star for your quarter or your half or your year, even depending on how big and meaty these projects are and what exactly you do. But start there. And then once you've got all these like individual tasks laid out, then plug it into something like Jira, Rike. There are a million out there. It doesn't matter which you use. The tools don't solve problems.
Right. But having a plan, at least in the first place, gives you the basis to then, when halfway through the quarter there's a big fire or a new problem, to look back to the plan and say, okay,
Yep.
where on the priority list does this fall? And personally, what I do, I try to think about solving problems too, but sometimes I get caught up in just like quick fixes. I try to keep a grid of like urgent, important, like a 4x4 grid, and I just slap a post-it note where I think it is, and I try to focus on the urgent and important things first, and then I go from there. That's a really good tip, Taft. Thanks for that.
Urgent and important, impact and effort. Both of those side by side will really help you organize your world. And another thing, Mike asked a question. You mind if I answer it here?
Yeah, go for it.
Where should sales ops, and I'm going to replace that with rev ops generally, where should operations report, VP of sales or somewhere else? So this is a question every company has to answer for themselves. I'm not a fan of one size fits all answers. There are plenty of good reasons to have them roll up under sales. Like, if I join a company, I'm going to have ops roll under me because I understand ops, and I'm not going to ask for frivolous things. If you're not an operator, probably shouldn't fight to have ops, even though it might short-term help you get reports built faster. I am a big fan of having ops report to someone outside of revenue, or someone high enough above revenue that the VP of sales or the CMO or whomever isn't just automatically going to get their way when they need something urgently, because that's how you end up with an ops function that just spins its wheels and does nothing important.
Yeah, I can totally see that. And then, so speaking of like having a high level picture enough to the perspective, if you are in a sales ops organization now, maybe in a small organization, but growing quickly and soon has the need for that like full cycle view of revenue, where that sales ops team needs to become really like a revenue ops team, take the bigger picture, or maybe there starts to need there needs to become a revenue ops team over the sales ops team, right? What are the ways that can enable that transition? What are conversations need to have, organizational changes?
So the first thing you need is someone to lead that. The umbrella ultimately needs to be held by a person, right? So if you just group sales ops, your sales ops analyst, your marketing ops analyst, maybe there's a finance ops person, and if you just like lump them together and put their desks near each other and say like, now you guys run ops, it's probably not going to work. You need somebody with likely more experience than your average analyst. You need somebody who has the internal juice to hold off all the steamrollers that are coming after ops constantly. I see that as my primary job. I'm a shit umbrella, right? I like keep, my job isn't to get in and build fields anymore. It's to make sure that the people who work for me feel safe digging into big meaty projects and fixing big things. And so there are two paths to this. One is if you're big enough and if you're at a place where you can actually use them, hire somebody for that. It's going to cost a lot, but once you're at the 300, 400, 500 person range, probably don't go outside for that. Have somebody who owns it long term.
What should that cost? Like that first RevOps leader hire?
If you want a real one, 200 OTE is absolute minimum. 250 is probably where you want to be for, like, if you want a me, I'm not taking jobs right now, but if you want somebody with my skill set and experience leading, you're looking at 250 to 300. If you want, and there are people far better than me at this, you're looking at 300 plus. So it's an investment, but oh man, it makes a big difference when you have somebody who can own all these pieces and has a VP or executive level understanding of how the business works. The other path is, and there are a million of me out there, bring somebody in who maybe is an outsider who can help you map everything, and they can often help you hire the right person, but have somebody with that level of experience, even if it's just temporarily long enough to like set up a good infrastructure. So outside is a great option if you don't have the $300K to throw at it for the one person.
Okay, got it. So there's one last question here that feels it's a good question. Brandon, thanks for sending this in. So there's a lot here, but it basically boils down to like sometimes Brandon is asked by his ops team. Brandon, you're a rep, you're an AE, I assume, and you're asked by your ops team to like do a cleanup task. Sometimes it seems like the ops team should maybe take a little bit more ownership. What's your take on that, Taft?
Completely agree, Brandon. The ops team needs to take more ownership, but not necessarily. We would be treating a symptom if their ownership takes the form of them doing the stuff you don't want to do. Nobody should be doing that stuff. And short term, go to Upwork, hire somebody for $5 an hour, teach them to do the thing you guys don't want to do and have them do it. You'll make somebody's day overseas for whom that's a great paycheck, and they'll take the work seriously. This is what I do with a lot of cleanups. Like, you can anonymize the data, do it in a spreadsheet. There are no security issues often. So one is like, once the fire is out, take a big step back and ask, why are we doing these cleanups? What led to this cleanup? And that's what never seems to happen, right? The VP of sales yells, things are cleaned up, she's happy. Then a month later, she's like, what the hell? We talked about this. Well, there's clearly a systemic issue leading to this over and over and over again. So like, rewind a little bit, take a look, and have your ops team try to understand why you're getting there. So often, some things as simple as validation rules can fix this. Some things as simple as requiring a few pieces of information that are sort of the root of this issue can fix it. Other times it's a bigger issue, but no less necessary to tackle. But Brandon, I think that's the issue. You need to get to the root of it. But short term, have your ops team, have somebody give them a small budget to go bring someone in to help with the cleanup while they actually fix the problem.
Yeah, that's a really good tip. That's what my wife always tells me. It's not that I have to clean more, it's that I have to make fewer messes. I'm still not good at it. Guys, there's a lot we didn't get to today. I know some questions we didn't answer. And I also had several things I wanted to ask Taft, but this has been an amazing conversation, Taft. Thank you so much for joining us. If people want to connect with you or follow you somewhere, where can they do that?
Yeah, so we have a new, not great website set up. It's icebergops.com. So you can go there. Also, just connect with me on LinkedIn. Happy to, if you connect with me, remind me of why you're connecting with me. Otherwise, I'll ignore it. And I'm happy to connect with any of you guys. Advice is free, man. Hit me up. I'm happy to be helpful in any way I can to you.
Taft, you're the man. Thanks so much for joining us. We will definitely have to do this again. We're already getting asked by the audience. So I'm a people pleaser. You're coming back at some point, and we'll let you all know. I'll also make sure you all get that ebook, and you'll get a recording of this session. So share it with your coworkers, other people on your ops team who couldn't make it today. We'll send it to you, Jason. We'll send you the recording either later today or tomorrow. So yeah, thanks for stopping by, everybody. I'll see you on the next Sales Hacker webinar, and have a good rest of the week.